Hey everybody, welcome to Cam's Corner. I'm your host, Colin Martin from the Next Man Up podcast. Give you all a little history lesson. Cam was one of the founders of the Nosebleeds podcast, which became our media company, Next Man Up. On the Nosebleeds, Cam was our in-house MLB and NHL expert. His over-the-top opinions made me and Banning have to step in before he got out of control on multiple occasions. But here on Cam's Corner, we have none of that. When you step into Cam's Corner, you have to be ready to catch some heat. And with that, I would like to introduce you guys to my co-host, my guest, Cam Maes.
Welcome everyone to Cam's Corner. I am psyched for me and Colin to introduce this section of the Next Man Up podcast. We've been talking about it for a little bit, and I'm here to give you all your MLB inside news, NHL inside news, and just kind of go along with the MLB season, NHL playoffs right now. So
yeah, I mean, that's a great way to segue right into it. Here in Cam's Corner, we try to be quick, have no nonsense, but once we get into it, we'll have some fun. So to start it off, let's talk baseball. Let's go to the MLB. One of the first questions I wanted to ask you, as our MLB expert, I want to know 3 players you think will have up years. Who are going to be some guys that have the best season we've ever seen from them?
So I picked 3 players. I kind of thought about it for a little bit today and was looking at past couple seasons, and some players have new teams. So the first player I'm going to go with is Alex Verdugo of the Boston Red Sox. The past couple of years, he's been trying to focus on just power, bulking up, and it hasn't really been going well for him. On a very disappointing last year for the Red Sox team. Towards the end of the year, everyone just really wasn't competing because the season was already lost. And one of the last games of the season, manager Alex Cora took a shot at Alex Verdugo for not really playing how he wanted to play and not being there mentally. So Alex Verdugo took that to heart and put a chip on his shoulder. And, all offseason, he slimmed down a bunch, worked on only contact hitting and fielding more. So he's going to be a really great hitter for the Red Sox, is compact, short swing, get on base, really for RBIs and all that, which I think is great for the team. Personally, last year, he had an average of 280, slugged 405, 11 home runs, 74 RBIs. I'd probably predict for him to get around maybe 15 home runs, a little bit less than that, but I like to see the RBIs around like 90 this year. I think he's going to have a really good year in the field as well, considering we have a lot of outfield depth this year with Adam Duvall, Ref Snyder, Yoshi. All these players are really good. And I'm excited to see where his season lands this year. And as well as the Red Sox, just him, he's basically a fan favorite this year when he got traded to us in 2020, I believe. And I think he's due. He's due to have a really good year.
Yep.
So my next player is Cody Bellinger of the Chicago Cubs. So people tend to forget this guy was a MVP 2019 season, absolute stud. And then he fell off the past couple of years, and everyone's right on him. Everyone's hating on him. It's like, why? He's the MVP. And so he had 2 bad seasons. I don't like to count the 2020 season because it was only a 60-game season, so it didn't really count. Personally, like the Dodgers Mickey Mouse ring. But yeah, last year he batted 210, slugged 389, 19 home runs, 68 RBIs. I think a change of scenery to the Cubs from the Dodgers is really going to help him as well. Perfect now. It's a great field for him to hit in. He's kind of one of their main power hitters on that team. I'm not sure where he's batting right now. I'm going to have to look that up. But I see him maybe 25 plus home runs this year. That's kind of a reach, but I think he will. 68 RBIs last year. I'd probably see him in like the high 70s, low 80s, maybe even 90s if we really bet on it. And yeah, I think he's gonna have a really good year. So we'll see. It's very early. We're 3 games down out of 162. So we'll see. So my third and final player who I expect to have a breakout season is pitcher Tristan McKenzie for the Cleveland Guardians. I think he's one of my favorite pitchers in the league, only because he's 6'5" and he's 165 pounds, and he throws high 90s.
He's kind of built like you.
Literally. So when you see this guy, you're like, oh, he's not a pitcher. He's not throwing like 100. And this guy throws gas, and he has great control of his pitches. Last year, he went 11-11, had a great ERA, 2.96, 190 Ks, and a .95 whip. The only thing with him, I'd like to see those wins up a little bit more and losses a little bit down. I think he has a really good infield this year, great outfield. Guardians are a great team to watch this year. Really good last year, deep run in the playoffs, but I expect them to be an ALCS contender this year.
Yeah, And I hate to interject,
Oh yeah.
but it's a perfect segue. I mean, you bring up some players that you think will prove themselves this year. I'm going to ask three teams that you think will improve on the year.
Yep.
Who has the most to prove, I should say.
So my number one team that has the most proved this year is the San Diego Padres. They went in all offseason for this one season, and they signed a bunch of players to max deals. Manny Machado is a 13-year deal. Xander Bogaerts, unfortunately, taking that to heart, stolen from our Red Sox. They just signed up Jake Cronenworth to a 8-year deal. So they are stacked for a long time. They still have Tatis, who's on a suspension right now, but he'll be back towards that second half of the season. But they've had very disappointing seasons in the past couple of years. 2022, they lost in the NLCS. 2021, they missed the postseason. The 2020 season, they lost in the NLDS. So I think this is their year. I think they get a ton of hate, but they also don't really know how to close out games against good teams. They never really show up in the clutch, but I think Bogarts is a great player to add on. I think Machado's going to have a really good year this year too. Their pitching, Blake Snell is going to be great, but it's just that bullpen that needs to get better. That bullpen really needs to prove itself this year. Also, the addition of Michael Wacha, previously on the Red Sox. I think he's going to have a really good year this year. He was good with the Red Sox, but I think a change of scenery again would help him again. They also got Matt Carpenter. He's a vet, but he'd be great DH, throwing a couple games, and he was solid for the Yankees last year. He had a run where he was getting 2 home runs every game for 2 weeks, so that was really good to see.
Yeah, and one thing I want to jump in before you say your next team, you brought up a guy, Michael Wacha. I'm going to come on here and say he was probably one of the most underrated players in the league last year. If you look at his stats, I was sitting here at school looking at his stats with some of my friends, and I thought they were pranking me. His ERA was shockingly low. He had a bunch of wins. The Padres, and I'm with you on that. They just got to keep bringing in some guys. And you mentioned vets like Carp. I mean, it's about time, right?
And with Wacha too, he was injured a lot for the season, but when he pitched, he did really good. His wins, he was 18-4 or something like that, something around there. But he had a great season last year, and I'm surprised we didn't re-sign him, the Red Sox. But I'll be rooting for him.
Yeah.
So my second team, you may not like this, but the Blue Jays. They have the most to prove this year. Vlad Jr., this is his year to shine. Bichette, he needs to have a really good year. He needs to stop swinging for the fences every single pitch. His helmet's flying off. It's dude, just swing for contact now. Come on. But I think they're going to have a pretty good year. The AL East, I think, is the best division in baseball. I really have no idea how it's going to go because you have the Orioles who are in play now, who are really good, really young team. I still think they have 2 or 3 more years to get up to the top. And the Red Sox are kind of in a couple bridge years right now. But the Yankees, Blue Jays, and Rays are all up there right now. But they've had some disappointing seasons as well. Last season, they lost in the wild card. 2021, they missed the playoffs. 2020, they lost in the wild card again. And I think they're too good of a team to be losing in wild cards. I think they should be going past divisional rounds, even World Series. I think this year it's World Series or bust for them. You have pitchers like Alex Manoah, who's one of my favorites. I think he's super underrated. I mean, that guy is a dog, absolute dog, and he is a beast. That guy's 6'6", 280, and he throws heat.
He's built like a Mini Cooper. And one thing I want to throw in, I don't want to cut you off again.
Oh, no, go ahead.
I have quite a bit of questions on this one specifically. I was hearing some buzz earlier. I was watching their game against the Cards today where Chris Bassett threw 3 pitches, got 2 homers off him. It was a hell of a performance. With that being said, there was some people saying on the broadcast, on the Cardinals broadcast, that the Blue Jays should be people's favorites to win the AL East this year. I know that's a tough take with the Yankees' dominance and, the recent stretch. Do you think it's possible? I want to hear your genuine take on that off the record.
So I think they should. The Yankees they're dealing with injuries right now, and they're a good team, but they can't rely on Judge all season. They can't rely on Stanton all season or Garrett Cole. I hate Garrett Cole. He had a good first game, but I hate him. I think that if they stick it together, they always start out really good, and towards July, August, they have a really downfall, and they go all the way down to the wild card, and they're struggling for the wild card race as they were last year with the Mariners.
Yeah.
But I think Chris Bassett had a tough first game, but I think he's going to be a great addition for this team. Another star you can put with Manoah. I love Barrios too. I think he's have a really strong year this year. Well, yeah, I don't see him as clear favorites to win it, but I think they're neck and neck with the Yankees and Rays,
Yeah.
honestly.
Yeah, I think that's a good take. I want to hear that last team that has a lot to prove this year.
So the last team, this should probably be the number one team on every MLB's list, the Los Angeles Angels. You have two players, generational talent players, but two of the best players of all time, and you can't even make the playoffs. And you have Gio Urshela, Anthony Rendon, and you have strong pitching too. I just don't know what's going on in Los Angeles. Mike Trout, one of my favorite players, absolute stud, has been battling injuries in the past couple of years, but I think this year he is due to have a great season again. I think he'll be in the MVP talk this year. And Ohtani, he's Ohtani. He's changed the game of baseball. He's brought people who hated baseball to love it, and he's grown the sport internationally, as we see also with the World Baseball Classic. I mean, I thought that was great for fans and the world to see baseball. But the Angels, they added Brandon Drury from the Padres. I think he's going to be a really good addition for them. Get another bat up there, contact for some more runs to score. But, anything can happen. I'm going to be rooting for this team. I think a lot of people were. But I think, again, if they don't make the playoffs this year, I think Ohtani might be gone to free agency.
Yeah, and don't sleep on my guy Ward, too. They built a really solid outfield out there.
Yeah.
With that being said, I mean, we talked about some players that we are excited for, some teams that we really think should make the jump this year. I want to know your playoff bracket and predictions. We can get in depth on this one. I want to hear the reasoning. Or just break it down for me, because this is what we need to know.
So I did a division kind of projections and
let's hear it.
Predictions. So there's a lot of divisions that were really hard for me. I took a lot of time on, but I ultimately decided with the AL East. In first place to win the division, I picked the Yankees. In second place, I picked the Blue Jays to get it. I think that the Yankees will kind of do really good as they always do, have a little struggling point, but then just take off at the end of the year as they usually do. I think the Blue Jays will kind of start off a little slow and then just take off, but won't be there quite yet to catch the Yankees. But I think it'll be close. I think they'll be like 2 or 3 games back, maybe 1.5, something like that. So it'll be meaningful games for a division title towards the end of the season. But again, anything can happen. Third place, I picked the Rays. They're a really good team, but I just don't think they're as good as the Blue Jays or Yankees. But they always find their way to sneak in. They win crazy games. They're always an underdog, which is kind of weird to me because I feel like they've proved themselves to be favorites in the past couple of seasons.
Yeah.
Now, Randy Rosarina, face of maybe even be a top 3 face of baseball right now. Great player, and he leads that team. But you kind of look at their pitching staff, and there's a lot of injuries to them. And again, that's another team that battles with injuries, and it's if they can stay healthy. That's their big question this year. Fourth place, I have the Boston Red Sox. This year's a bridge year. Last year is very disappointing. We have a great offensive team. It's just the pitching again. Heim Bloom really didn't do a lot to help with our bullpen. But I think we have great hitting. It's just, can that bullpen win games for us? Because we know we can score runs. But can we take those runs off the board from other teams? And can our starters play? And it was also tough with the Trevor Story injury. And we don't know if he'll play this season. There's multiple reports. Oh, he'll be back in June. Oh, August. Oh, he'll be out for the season. So we really don't know with Tommy John and all that.
Yeah.
In the last place, I have the Baltimore Orioles. Just because they're in last place, I don't think that means they're going to have like a 51 season. I think this whole division is going to be like 4 games back, 5 game backs. Like everyone's going to be up there for title and playoffs. It's just going to be it's a really tough division. It's the hardest in baseball. And they have a really young team. I love Adley Rutschman. I think he's in 2-3 years, he's going to be the greatest catcher in the league. And I think at the end of his career, he may be one of the greatest catchers to play the game. He's a great guy, great team player, and he just knows the game of baseball. Great IQ.
And I think
the favorite.
I think it's going to sound like a classic Cam hot take, but I really agree with you on this one. Adley, he puts it all together. He mixes power with contact, with top-tier defense. He really is an all-around player more than anything. With that being said, let's speed run through some of these other divisions. Let's hear who you got.
So the AL West, I got the Astros first, Mariners in second. They're going to have a really good year this year. America's team. Third, I have the Angels. I love them. I can't pick them for team the most proven, put them in last, so I think they'll be good. Fourth, I have the Rangers. They added a lot of players this year, such as Jacob deGrom, best pitcher in the league, but I don't think they'll be able to save them. And last place, I have the Athletics.
Yep.
The AL Central, first place, I have the Guardians. I think they're going to make a deep playoff run. They're going to be a really fun team to watch this year. Second place, I have the Minnesota Twins. They got Carlos Correa back, and it's really just him and Buxton. Pitching needs to be a thing to watch too. So we'll see what they do at the trade deadline and where they are at All-Star game. Third place, I have the Royals. I think they're gonna have a really good season this year, and they have another team that has to prove something, and they have a lot of young guys such as the Orioles, and I think they'll be good as well. Fourth place, out of the White Sox. They're not a greatly built team. I still think they have a couple more years to kind of run for it. And the last place, out of the Tigers. Nothing really to mention, just Javi Baez.
Yeah.
So going on to the National League, NL East. NL East is one of the harder divisions as well, along with the AL East. First place, I have the Braves. I think this whole division is going to be neck and neck between these three teams. So first place, I have the Braves. Second place, I have the Mets. And third place, I have the Phillies. I think they might all make playoffs. Who knows? But it's going to be really close between them. And then in fourth place, I have the Marlins. And in fifth place, I have the Nationals.
Yeah, and I'm sure Banning would love to hear where you have the Phillies and the NL East rankings, considering his were exactly the same, right?
Yeah. Well, I just don't think they're going to start out good without Bryce Harper. I mean, that's a tough injury to battle with and come back with. That's going to be tough. So I'm going to see how they do without him.
Yeah.
So the NL West, first place, I have the Padres. I think it's going to be neck and neck with them Dodgers, but they're going to come out first finally. Second place, I have the Dodgers. They're still powerhouse, and I think they're going to be really good. Third place, I have the Rockies. I think they're going to have a good season. CJ Cron's going to lead them to a couple good wins. I think they'll maybe like a 70-win team. Fourth place, I have the Diamondbacks. Still not a lot to talk about. They'll get a couple good wins, but other than that, and then last place, I have the Giants.
Wow. So I want to hear some of the reasoning on, because a lot of people, if you look at, if you talk to ESPN, they're putting the Rockies last and the Giants third. Like, what's the reasoning on that?
I just don't think the Giants are a great team anymore. They only have pitching is really Logan Webb, and that's really it. A lot of their guys have left, and they're a young team, so they're gonna be kind of relying on prospects this year too. And Jock Peterson, I love him, but he can't really hold the team together. So I think they're gonna have a couple years of just kind of being suck, and then a bridge year, and then maybe get back to the postseason. And I think the Rockies, Chris Bryant, CJ Cron, Charlie Blackmon, I think they're gonna have a really good season. But again, it's the pitching. It's a lot of teams. They have great offenses. They just don't really have the pitching and injuries as well.
Yeah.
And then the last division, the NL Central. First place, I have the Cardinals. Second place, I have the Brewers. Third place, I have the Cubs. Fourth place, I have the Pirates. And last place, I have the Reds. Personally, I think this is the worst division of baseball. Isn't really a lot of teams good besides the Cardinals, and the Brewers don't really have that much excitement anymore. We don't really know where Christian Yelich went. So.
Yeah. No, and I understand that. So with that being said, we knocked out the divisions. I don't know if you have a playoff bracket in mind or if you just have a World Series matchup that you think you're going to see,
Yep. So I'll give my outlandish World Series and my realistic World Series.
It's always got to be something.
All right. So my outlandish one, I'm going with, from the American League, the Boston Red Sox. Anything can happen. Anything can happen. Let me tell you. Anything can happen. This team's gonna be a fun team to watch. I'm telling you, if they trade for a stud pitcher or a stud reliever this during trade deadline or any time of the season, who knows? This is exactly like the 2021 season. Everyone doubted us going into the league, going into the season. Everyone's like, "Oh, they're not gonna be a good team." And what happened? We were 2 wins away from the World Series. 2 wins away from World Series. So I think we're gonna come out top and go to the World Series. And from the National League, I think that, honestly, the Padres. It'd be crazy. Baseball gods might take this Red Sox, Padres, Bogarts, Boston. And, that's a 4-game sweep by the Red Sox right there. That's an easy win.
All right, let's get,
All right.
I like your outlandish picks. That's why we come on the show. But What are you thinking really deep down there once you get past your heart?
Really deep down. Personally, I think it's going to be another Astros-Braves rematch. I think both teams have studs on their team, great pitching, great coaching, And, they're both powerhouses in both leagues. And I think it'll be another 7-game series. And I think I'll take the Astros in this one.
Yeah. No, and I respect that. I mean, as much as the Astros and the Braves are not fan favorites by any means, they consistently put together championship rosters.
Yeah.
And as we're recording this episode, just kind of to bring us forward a little bit, we're still very early in the baseball season. Most teams have only played 3 or 4 games at this point. So I want to ask you, before we really see the season-long effects, how are you feeling about the pitch clock and the banning of, the shift rules, I guess you could say?
So personally, the pitch clock, I kind of relate to both sides of it. I don't hate it. I don't love it. A lot of things for me is, when I go to a ballpark, I want to go for a long time, I want to watch a game, but sometimes I can see, younger fans. It's like, oh, I don't want to be here this long. But also I read up on an article a couple of days ago. I saw it's like pitch clock might not last long because the games will be shorter. Owners are going to lose more money because people won't be buying more stuff because they won't be going there for 3.5 hours. You're going to buy, 4, 6 beers, 7, 8 beers for a bunch of people. over the duration of the game, you do it all after the duration of the game, and you're only going to miss half an inning, but if you go now, you may miss an inning or 2, but I like it. It keeps the game going. It's bringing new fans in. I think this may be the most fans MLB has had in a while, especially with as I said earlier, the World Baseball Classic brought in a ton of fans, and that was great for the sport to really bring it back from the dead, basically. So the shift, I hate it. I think the shift should have not been banned. It's going to be tough for hitters now because you can't go opposite field anymore and all that. But I like the outfield. They didn't ban that, so like you can kind of there's little like holes into it. But we'll see how it goes along the season.
Yeah, no, and I respect those opinions. And I just want to bring up 3 major points. The you heard it here points from Cam's Corner today. The ones that really stick out to me is that the Boston Red Sox are going to win the World Series. Randy Arozarena is the top 3 face of the MLB right now, and you should drink 7 to 8 beers every MLB game.
Hey, if your team's down by 12, you won't even care.
And that's Fenway Park for you. To kick it over to the NHL, I think we just had some great MLB talk. And as I mentioned earlier, Cam was not only our MLB expert, he was also our NHL expert. And depending on when you ask him, he's one more than the other. So with that being said, the NHL, we're in a way different point in the season than MLB. As you'd expect, that's how the schedule works. We're in playoff talks right now. And if you couldn't tell with Cam's bias, big Boston sports guy. So, the Bruins are hot commodities right now. We're going to talk about them in a minute. But, the playoff matchups, we're kind of solidifying them. We're not really there yet. What are 2 possible playoff matchups that you're looking forward to? And I'd like to hear why, too. Like, who would you like to see?
So there's one playoff matchup that has already been set in stone. It's already there. And it's the Toronto Maple Leafs versus the Tampa Bay Lightning. And they always play each other in the playoffs first round. I think this is going to be a 7-game series, absolute dogfight. Both teams have studs, 1 through 4 lines. You have Stamkos, Kucherov, Braden Point, all these players in the Lightning. Then you got Austin Matthews, Mitch Marner, Ryan O'Reilly now on the Maple Leafs. I think both these teams have had great seasons. Lightning have been in a little bit of a rough patch lately, but I think they'll step it up come playoff time. And Leafs, they're a powerhouse this season, both of them. Both have great goalies, great defense. They've always been in Stanley Cup talks. But my thing for me, too, is the Leafs have not had good luck with first rounds in past seasons. And, they need to stick together because they'll go to 7 games and they'll blow it in the 7th game. They'll go up 3-1, 3-2, and they won't know how to close out a series. And, I hate the Leafs, but you have to respect them. They're a great team. They play well together. Good coach over there. But personally, I think they will beat the Lightning in this series. I think it's definitely going to be a 7-game series, and I think everyone will agree with that as well.
Yeah.
And another series that isn't set in stone, but the playoffs ended today. This is how it would be. It is the New Jersey Devils versus the New York Rangers. Both teams cross the river, good dogfight, good rivalry, and both teams have had a great season. Great additions at the trade deadline to make them stronger. Devils really came out of nowhere this year, No one really knew how they're going to be. Super young team, and they're coming out fast, and they're really good. Rangers as well. picked up Vladimir Tarasenko in a trade, Patrick Kane, two great veterans and great players in the NHL. And I think this as well is going to be a 7-game series. It's going to be a fun, every game is going to be fun to watch, great atmosphere. But personally, I think the Rangers are going to come out on top in this.
Yeah.
I think,
And no, continue.
go ahead.
I had nothing. Go.
Okay. I think that, you have Zibanejad over there too, and Kako over there. Great goalie, great coach, and I just think there'll be too much for the Devils. You have Jack Hughes over here on the Devils, Timo Meyer, and it's gonna be tough. But Devils, I think your season ends in round 1.
Yeah, and I mean, if fans at home don't know, I'm recording this right now in the beautiful upstate New York in Ithaca, New York, and this is a playoff series I've heard about all year. People have been wanting to see this. When the Rangers picked up Kane, I swear to God, there were shock waves on campus, so especially for, this New York, New Jersey rivalry that I feel like we don't even talk about enough in sports.
Yeah,
It would be pretty huge.
Yeah.
So, I mean, with that being said, before we get your full playoff breakdown, I want to know the top 5 teams that you think have been the most surprising this year. I don't know. I can't tell if you're an optimist or not sometimes. This might be positive. This might be negative. It could be a mix of both.
Yep.
Throw it at me.
So I did a couple teams, kind of positive, kind of bad. 1 second, let me get this. So my first team, positive, the Seattle Kraken. Their second team in the league, second season in the league, my bad. And last season, awful, awful inaugural season. And, you kind of compare them to the Golden Knights. And in the Golden Knights first season, they went to the Stanley Cup. It was kind of the expansion draft. I thought they had a couple good picks. But I just, it didn't come together last season. But this year, they're 41-26-8. They have the first wild card right now. I think they're going to basically win the wild card. They should. And, they're kind of a team you never really know what's going to happen. They could be a first-round exits or they could go to the Stanley Cup,
Yeah.
I think they're a really good team over there. And we'll see. And I think there's only like 4 or 5 games left in the season. So, my second surprising team that hasn't done great this year has done really good this year, kind of mediocre, but the Los Angeles Kings. I think they're a very quiet team this year, very underrated, not talked a lot about in the hockey world. They're 44-22-10 this year. They're basically making the playoffs already. I think first round they're projected to play the Oilers, and Oilers are really good this year, but you never know, they could stun a couple brackets from people, and they could make a deep run as well. I've always liked the Kings, but they've had a couple rough years. But when you think about the Kings, you kind of look back to like 2013, that era where they kind of dominated. It was them and the Blackhawks, and you think about that overtime Stanley Cup winner. One of the greatest moments in sports. Always talked about. So my third team is, we already talked about it a little bit. The Devils really came out of nowhere, having a great season. Third best team in the East Coast, so I think they're really good. Fourth team, all said them as well. The Rangers really came out of nowhere. They're projected to have an okay season, not as good as they are now, but with the additions of Kane and Tarasenko, they're going to make a deep run for sure.
Yeah.
And the last most surprising team, I'm going to say this and we'll talk about them after as well. The Boston Bruins. Coming into this season, they were the most hated team, saying, "Oh, they're old, they're washed. They're gonna have an awful season, mediocre, miss playoffs." Look at them now. They just tied the most points in NHL record. They have the 2 greatest goalies in the NHL right now. One who's gonna win the Vezina record, and 1 through 4 line, unstoppable. I think our fourth line's better than some teams' first line. They are just a powerhouse, and with Jim Montgomery, great coach, great player coach, great addition to this team. Bruce Cassidy was good. He was not a player coach, and that's why you saw a lot of players were leaving because they didn't like him, requested trades, and then he left, and now they're playing like the best seasons of their life, such as Jake DeBrusk. So
yeah, and I mean that's what we're really here to talk about. We say we're going to talk about the NHL. We're really going to talk about the Bruins when we're in Cam's corner.
Yeah.
So with that being said, I have the 2-parter question. Kind of what I want to wrap up this episode, because this is really what we're looking forward to. The first part is I want to see your look ahead into the playoffs, but with the underlying question, are the Bruins built to take it all this year? And I want you to tell me why or why not.
I will say this right now. They are built for it. They are the greatest team in hockey. This may be the greatest team we have ever seen in NHL history. I think there's no team better, no team that can take us in a 7-game series. But the only thing is the President's Trophy curse. There is a curse that when you are the number one team in the Eastern Conference, you always lose in the first round, as we've seen the Panthers in past years. The past 4 years, they have lost first round every single year. But this year, I think they'll break the curse. They are too good of a team to break the curse. They're too good to make simple mistakes and mess up. And you see them play, they come out firing. And even I went to the first game of the season, and we didn't have a bunch of players. McAvoy, one of the best defensemen in the NHL, was out. Marchand, who is, you can talk about one of the best players in the NHL, was out. We had a bunch of other key players who were out, and I'm like, we are looking good this year even without them. And like everyone around, it's like we're looking we're looking fast, we're good. And I'm like, I thought we were gonna be good, but not as this good. And no one thought about that.
Yeah.
We have Olmark having one of the best goalie seasons ever. He's first in every single goalie stat. Jeremy Swayman, a UMaine kid, who's in the top 5 for every goalie stat. Both of them who are absolutely amazing. And I don't think no one's beating them in the playoffs. I really don't.
Yeah, and with that being said, I don't want to give my bias here as a host, but I do agree. But which teams do you think are really giving them the most run for their money? Like who could stop the Bruins this year?
The only team that I would say can come close to it is in the Eastern Conference, and it's the Carolina Hurricanes. I think we've played 3 games against them this year. They've won 2, and 2 of them were earlier in the season, but they've had our number. We won 1 game in shootout against them, and they've always been a good team. They lost to them in the second round last year, the playoffs. So, Bruins really want to get their revenge on them, but the Canes are a well-rounded team. Great coach over there. Their coach played as well. I forget his name, but he played for the Hurricanes. They're as well a fast team. They're a cup contender this year as well. But I think that will, I have them lined up in the conference final, but I think it'll be a 7-game series, but the Bruins will come out on top, maybe even 6 games. But that's really the only team I see giving them a run for their money.
So we can book it down. If the Bruins make the Stanley Cup Finals, you think they win it?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. No team in the West scares me.
Nothing you're even thinking about in the West.
No,
I just want to
it's
clarify.
all East Coast. No one in the West.
All East Coast.
Yep.
All right. And my final question, I don't have this on the notes. I want to hear the raw opinion. How many beers do you think you should drink at an NHL game?
All right. So if it's like regular season, like 2 or 3, but if you're going to a playoff game, like a meaningful playoff game, like a game 5, 6, 7, you gotta be like 10 to 15. Like you don't even gotta remember it.
All right. Just to wrap this up, if you come into Cam's corner, 2 things. You're gonna get biased Boston sports takes, and you're gonna get alcohol poisoning. Yep. So with that being said, that's a great way to end the first episode of Cam's Corner. Unlike some of the other podcasts we have here on Next Man Up, me and Cam likes to be in or out. If you know Cam, he's a blue collar guy. He's got a lot of work to do, and he does school on the weekends, whether he will admit it or not. So with that being said, Cam, I'll give you the floor to say goodbye, but that wraps it up for Cam's Corner episode 1.
Awesome. Episode 1. That was great. Thank you guys for listening. And, we'll be back in a couple weeks for playoffs review. Round 1 might be done, and we'll be deeper in the MLB season, so we'll have a bunch more to talk about.
Yep. Hey, we'll see you guys sooner than you think. Thank you.
Mamba out.